Thank you. So welcome everyone. We're going to get started with iPad basics. So we're actually going to start today and take a look at the most basic things. I'm actually going to go over the physical structure of the iPad, and then we're going to talk about some of the little gestures that make a big difference. The one thing with Apple that you have to remember is every single, whether you're using one fingers or two fingers, or if you're swiping up or down or left or right, everything does something different. So one of those things, it's kind of like an accessibility and a shortcut type thing instead of making 1,000 clicks. So I'll take you through some of those shortcuts today as well. And we'll also go into, how to manipulate the apps so that they look the way that you want them to on your screen so that it works for organizational purposes. Some other things in terms of, accessing apps and things like that. We'll also talk about creating shortcuts on your own from, Safari or something along those lines. And lastly, we'll also take a look at scanning files and being able to save them as PDFs and uploading them either into Google or into Schoology. All right. So this is the agenda, and that was what was accessible via the QR code. So what I'm going to do now is actually share from my iPad in just a bit after I go over the physical features of the iPad. All right. So taking a look, this is your iPad, right? You'll see I'm actually logged into Zoom on my iPad as well, because eventually I'll be sharing from there. So this little circle button down here is called the home button. And that does a variety of different things. And as I walk through the layout of some of the things that I want to show you, I'll explain the functionality of the home button, but there's a lot of things that it does. All right. On the side, you will see that there's a plus or a minus button. This is only for the case that I have currently. There's, depending on your grade level, you have different cases. So you might not have the plus and minus, but there's a button on the side that either increases or decreases the volume. Down over here, we have the charging cable. So it uses a lightning charger. So when you are given your iPad, you'll have a charging cable as well as a charging block. And you would, stick it in there and charge it. The last thing I wanted to bring up is the the headphone jack. So this uses an old-fashioned headphone. So you could just use the one with the auxiliary, auxiliary extension and be able to plug it in there and use headphones that way. These do have Bluetooth capability as well. So if you want to do, splurge on a set of earbuds that are Bluetooth, you can do that as well. Right, so those are basically the physical features of the iPad. One thing I wanted to say is with Apple, most technology these days, right? When something is not working well or your computer freezes, right? And you want to throw it out the window, the best way to see if it works again is to do a hard reset. What a hard reset means is turn it completely off and then turn it back on and let it load. So the way that you would do that is to hold down the sleeper button. So I didn't go over that button. I missed that one. The sleep button actually will just turn your screen off. This is really good, saves battery, right? So if you're not using your iPad right away, if you hit the sleep button, it just kind of shuts it off. But now that's different than a hard reset. What that does is it basically locks your program. So I'm actually putting in my passcode again because it locks it out so that, like, if I left it on my desk, somebody wouldn't be able to access my stuff because I have a passcode enabled. The hard reset is actually turning it off. So if I click the home button, I wouldn't be able to see a screen right away. I would have to get it started again. So, yeah, so that's what I want. What was I going to just say? Oops. All right. So, so the hard reset, you would hold down the sleeper button and the home button until the iPad goes off. I'm not going to do that right now because it'll knock me out of Zoom and it'll take me a little bit to get back in. But just know that you're going to press that home button and that sleeper button for a few seconds until the screen goes black. When you turn on, it'll show an Apple and a loading button, and you'll see that it has restarted. That is Apple's #1 fix. Did you turn it off and back on again? All right. So each iPad has an iCloud backup of 200 gigabytes given by the school. Now, the way that iCloud works, iCloud is something that is an Apple thing. And basically what it does is if your iPad is destroyed, it could bring back your iPad. If any of you have an iPhone, that's basically how they transfer one iPhone over to another. So similarly with iCloud, that's the way it would work. Now, in terms of individual files, depending on the app that is being used, in most cases it is backing up to iCloud, but sometimes you have to enable that. And if it's not enabled, then your files may be gone. All right. So you want to make sure if it is a possibility to back up to iCloud that you do so. Now, the one thing that we want to also talk about is the Google versus Schoology storage. All right. So in K through 3, they will have Google accounts and they can upload to Google Drive or back up to Google Drive. In grades 4 through 12, they can actually back up their resources to Schoology into their resources file as well. So basically, just so that you know, there is a way to back up those individual files. So if there's something that's really important or something that a student would want to keep from grade 4 or grade 10 or so, they would back it up to Schoology. All right. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over some of the features. I'm going to start sharing my screen from my iPad. So just bear with me for a moment. Okay. All righty. All right. So the first thing that I wanted to go over is if you use 2 fingers to swipe up. Oops, sorry. Sorry about that. All right. So sorry about that. So if you wanted to go from page to page, you're going to use 2 fingers to do that. So if I swipe to the left, it's going to get me to the page to the right. If I go the other way, so that I'm swiping to the right, it will bring me the page that's on the left. Kind of like you're turning a book, pages in a book. All right. And you'll notice that there's already apps that are there. Just something to be aware of. The only apps that are put on the iPad are district approved apps. So I'll talk a little bit on how to access those apps that are currently available and how to delete them and so on in a little bit. So any educator apps that have been approved by our district technology will be already placed on these apps for you or on this iPad for you, or you'll be able to access them in the app portal, which I'll go into in just a bit. All right. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is reorganizing the app. So you may see, like mine, I only have a couple here and there, right? But that's because I organized them all. If you take a look at this photo and video folder, I have like 1,000 apps in there. That was because I cleaned it up for you guys so you didn't have to look at all my apps that are all around. But I'm going to show you how to do that. So there's 2 things that I wanted to go over. In order to be able to start reorganizing the apps, what you're going to do is press the app, hold down, and click Edit Home Screen. In any of those apps, now if you notice that said like create a new spreadsheet and so on, it's basically like a quick access, like almost like right clicking on a desktop. That's what holding down the app is like. We want to edit the home screen because my intent right now is to just shuffle the apps around the way that I want. Now that they're all wiggling, that's a good sign. So what we're going to do is just hold down and drag the app on top of another one. And automatically it creates this little folder. So if I were to click out, you see now I have like another one of those little blue squares. Now automatically it named it productivity, but that's because of the type of apps that I put in there. Apple kind of like categorizes it in themselves. But what you could do is actually rename this. So you could call it, I don't know, Office, anything that you wanted to. So that is something to consider so you can kind of create your own. Another thing is if I were to take an app, I can move it into an existing thing just like that. You just pick it up and you put it into the existing one. It's already good to go. And at any time you could change the name of those little file folders. Now, if I want to take an app out, what I'll do is pretty much the same thing, only I'm just going to move it out. That's it. If I just wanted to move and relocate where it was, I could just drag and drop. If I wanted to change the page, I would just hold it to the left or to the right until it moved to where I wanted it to go. All right. So another thing that I wanted to talk about, if you take a look at the bottom, it looks like I have a lineup of wiggling apps, right? On the bottom, that's called the quick access bar. And basically what that is like, your favorites, right? So if it's the shortcuts to apps that you use quite often, being a math teacher, graphing calculators on there for me, my mail app and Safari and so on. Now, if you notice, I have one of those little file folders down there. So I could literally take, oops, sorry about that. So I could take one of those folders and just drag it down and move it wherever I want to. And keep it in there, or I could do the same thing with an individual app. So if I wanted to put Keynote on my bar, I could do so. All right. Now, if you'll notice, I have two different sets of apps. I have the apps on the left, and then I have a vertical line and the apps on the right. The apps on the right are apps that I've gone into recently. They're not necessarily my shortcuts. They won't stay there. Those will always change. So just so that you know, the ones that are on the left of that vertical line are going to stay there because those are, the ones I like the most. Right. All right. Okay. So the next thing that I'm going to click done in the top right hand corner because I'm done moving everything around. The next thing that I'm going to do is swipe down from the top right hand corner. This is called your control center. This is something that we can also customize, and I'm going to show you how to do that in our general settings in just a bit. Basically, this is a great spot to go to troubleshoot for things. This is all of those things that like you just want to be able to fix really quick because something's not working. This is a great place to go. So again, in the top right hand corner, I just drag toward the center and this all pops down. So this little airplane is the do not disturb. Then you have, I believe that's AirDrop, this Wi-Fi button. So if your internet is not working, again, same old trick, turn it off, turn it back on again. And sometimes it just does what it needs to do to reconnect. That little wiry looking thing is a Bluetooth option. So if your earbuds aren't connecting or an external keyboard that you have is not connecting, that Bluetooth might not be enabled. So that's something to consider as well. And there's certain apps, this next one is the unlock icon with the little arrow. I don't know about you guys, but like sometimes when I'm working, the phone keeps going like this or the iPad keeps going like this. And I'm just like, oh my God, it's driving me crazy. So if I wanted to lock the orientation, now, no matter how I put my iPad, it's not going to change how it is, appearing on my screen. So it won't affect it, which is really nice. All right. And a couple of those other options that are down there are basically what I can customize in my general settings. The other thing I wanted to mention was from here, you can also control screen brightness. It's not showing you as in real time like it is on mine. There we go. A little bit better. And also you can control the volume. All right. So if you're finding that you can't hear the teacher, quickly I can see I'm on mute. And this is a little bit quicker than clicking the button, the plus button to get your volume higher. So it's just an alternative. Also, I mean, one of the options that I have here is that QR code reader. So if I were to basically go to the agenda from today, that's basically how the QR code works, and it automatically brings it up on our iPad. So that's just something to consider for you. I believe if you just use even the camera app, the same idea works just the same. They kind of built that in. All right. About that. So one thing I wanted to bring up about the Wi-Fi. So now this is very specific grade level, very specific grade levels that are different, okay? So K, grades kindergarten, 4, and 6 through 12 will be using Lightspeed. So if there's something that's happening, Lightspeed is basically how the students can sign into the internet. So for instance, if you're finding that the YouTube video won't load, or if you're going to a website and it's just not working properly, or your app is not working properly, a lot of the times it's because you forgot to sign into Lightspeed. And the way that Lightspeed works, at least in my experience, the way that Lightspeed works is that as soon as I come into work in the morning, I have to sign into Lightspeed. And then if I go home in the same day, I have to sign into Lightspeed before it starts working again. So I think it's when you change Wi-Fi networks that you're gonna have to re-log in. So that's something, like if you can't get your Wi-Fi to work, just make sure. And the way that you would do so is just going into Safari and honestly going into any website. Oops. it would activate it. Mine is, I'm already signed into Lightspeed. That's why I can Zoom right now. But basically you would just put in your district credentials, or the student would put in their district credentials in order to be able to get into the internet. In terms of the rest of the grades, so that would be grades 1 through 3 and 5, they have a different program where they're not going to need to sign into Lightspeed. And if they have any questions on that, their teachers are well versed in Lightspeed, trust me, because they have to do the same thing. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to go over is how to quickly search. I have to be honest with you. So I told you I have like these file folders with 1,000 apps in them. I'm probably not going to unorganize them again, and I'll tell you why. I never look for an app. To me, it's a waste of time. I would much more prefer to swipe down and search for it. So if I was looking for, let's say, Ed Creations or something like that, if I swipe down, I could literally search for any app that I'm looking for. So as long as you know the name of the app, you're good, and it's a smart search. So as long as it's like a keyword in there, you should be okay. Now be careful. So notice actually, you can't see with my finger, but I am swiping down from the center of my iPad, or I'm sorry, like the top. Oops. What did I just do? Sorry. If you swipe down, like a big swipe, it will be search. Now remember, I told you Apple's finicky, right? If I go to the top of the iPad, it will bring down my notification center. So just keep that in mind. There's a difference. So I'm on the main screen. A big swipe brings up my search. All the way from the top going down will bring up my control center or notification center. All right, the next thing, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to swipe down right now and I'm going to go to settings. I'm going to click the app to go into it. Now, again, just like I just showed you, instead of toggling through all of these settings, what you could do is actually just search for something that you're looking for. Honestly, the first time around, I would recommend that you and your child go through it and figure out what you need and where it is. If there's not something specific you're looking for, there may be something available that would be really helpful for you that you don't even know exists. I'm going to go over 2 different areas that I think that you should look in. This is especially great for students with special needs in terms of visual impairment, or even, like needing a contrast or something along those lines. In addition to students who have trouble reading, this is an excellent alternative to be able to have, something read to you. So the first one is called in the accessibility. So we go down to general, go into accessibility. First one I wanted to go over is Zoom. So if I turn this on, and it kind of tells you what to do, I'm just showing you that it is here. Basically, if I tap 3, it basically brings up almost like a magnifying glass where I can zoom in on that. Oops. Oh, sorry about that. Accessibility. So that is, and then you would drag 3 fingers to move it around the screen and double tap 3 fingers and drag to change the zoom. So that's something that you can play with. And similarly, the magnifier works kind of similar. Turn that off. You can change the display and text size. I'll never forget my mom, uses reading glasses, and she was like, I can't, every time somebody sends me a text message, I can't read it. And so I actually took her iPhone and I was like, Ma, let me do this for you. And I changed the text size. So now she doesn't need to grab her reading glasses when she is, getting a text message. So it was a little bit of a relief for her. But this also offers more than just a large text. It has bold. You could bold it if you need a little bit more stark contrast. You could increase the contrast of every screen. You can do an inverted color. So if you're not seeing everything that's on there, just realizing that I'm looking. But anyway, so if you play with these options, you could see what would be the best visual options for you. And again, playing with these options would be the best way for you to figure out what works best for you. Now, the one, especially in like lower grades or students who are having a difficult time reading, you would want to go to spoken content. I'm going to go back. And basically what this is text to speech. So basically, I wanted to speak my selection, so I have this toggled on. This also has a, an alternative thing. If you guys have an iPhone or, whatever, a lot of times like those long emails, I don't want to read them on my little iPhone screen. So what I do is I have this turned on and I can basically have it read it to me. So it is kind of, a good alternative as well. And you can adjust how fast this spoken content is. Speak selection, read selected content. And it'll read it to you so that you know exactly how fast it's going to read it. And again, I would go through those options and see which one works for you. Now, what I'm going to do very quickly. We're going to go into an app. Now, if you notice, I'm highlighting.
It appears here the iPad is frozen.
Yeah.
Well, the share screen, rather.
Go in here, see if I stop. Okay, so that's good.
Oh, yep, now we're caught up.
Back? Yeah, okay, great. So what I did was, I'm just taking any text that I'm finding on any website. You could do this in an email, you could do it on a Google form, you could do it on anything. And if you notice now, my option to speak comes up. So whatever is highlighted right now will be spoken. So I'm just gonna click speak.
Due, Friday, October 30th, 2020 at 11:59 p.m.
And so that's basically how it works. And again, I mean, even if you have a younger child and you want it to help them learn how to read, notice again, it's highlighting it.
Due, Friday, October 30th, 2020 at 11:59 p.m.
There's a little bit of a lag in between what you're hearing and what I'm seeing. But basically the highlight is being read. So this is a really good thing for kids who are learning to read as well, because it will read it as it's highlighting it so the kids can kind of make that connection. All right. Okay, I think that's all in terms of the accessibility options. That's all I really wanted to go over. Those are the most common ones that you want to go over. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about were your notification settings. Now, there may be notification settings within, let's say Google or Schoology that you can access directly through the program. But also on the iPad, this is something to consider, right? Especially for Schoology right now, I'm an admin in all of my teachers' courses, so I'm getting 1,000, notifications. So I turned it off for this meeting. But basically, especially Schoology, this is one of the benefits of having the Schoology app itself. So these are basically giving you the settings within each of the apps. And again, this is just in the regular settings. If you scroll all the way down, you'll see Schoology. I'm going to go to notifications. So I turned off banners. Banners basically will pop up at the top of your screen every time you get an update. So for instance, if a teacher is posting an assignment or something along those lines, or has a message, it'll pop up and it'll let the student know that an assignment was posted or is due. I don't think it'll actually say whether it's due. I take that back, but it'll say like whether an assignment is created and posted. So if you look here, you can actually see what the Schoology notification looks like. So now I see that Ms. Resig has added a new assignment for my Algebra 2 class. All right. And again, I would recommend for students to have the banners on so that it's right there front and center so that they can see it. The lock screen is if your iPad is technically off, it will just kind of like put it on that main screen, even if it's not open. And the notification center is what I was showing you, is if you take your finger at the top and scroll down and you'll see those. That's the notification center. All right. And you could change some of the other options in there and so on. Something else I wanted to talk about was apps and downloading apps and how to access apps and how to update apps. And again, because there's two different programs, we're currently in transition. For those who are basically using Lightspeed, you're going to be using something called App Portal. So if your teacher is saying, you'll have this on your iPad and you don't have it, if you click on the App Portal icon, you'll see all of the apps that are available. Now, I'm an administrator, so I don't have any teachers who are telling me that I need a particular app, so I don't have anything in there. But for instance, the reason for this is so that it doesn't take up tons of space on the student's iPad if they don't necessarily need an app. So they can access the App Portal that way. I believe for those who do not need to sign into Lightspeed, so grades 1 through 3, and 5, there's something called Jamp Portal, or something along. It's another app portal basically, and the teacher will show the students how to use that as well. In terms of downloading the app, you would just click on the app and it would download to your screen. So if you ever accidentally deleted an app or purposely deleted an app and then wound up needing it later on, you could always access those apps again, and it's not a big deal. And if you ever have any trouble with any of that, the tech coordinators in each building are set aside to be able to help you with that. So if you need to update an app, the way that you would do that, or if an app isn't working well and you think, oh, I think it needs to be updated. If you're using Lightspeed, the way that you'll do it is basically I would first let the teacher know that your app isn't working correctly. And I'm sure that they have the answer specific to your student's iPad. But basically, in some of the cases, you may have to delete the app and then reinstall it using the app portal, and that will update it. In other ones, you may just be able to go into the portal and update it from there. So I'm not going to go into the specifics of those because depending on the grade level and device, it might be a little bit different. But just know that those are your 2 options. And to honestly, just ask the teacher, my app just stopped working, it won't open. If you let them know, they'll be able to direct you either to the right person or how to fix it. All right. So the next thing that we're going to talk about is how to access the apps that are currently open. So I'll never forget the first time that me and my sister got an iPhone at the same time. She was like, I don't get it. Like, my phone is dying in like one day. It's brand new. Is that how these things work? And really what was happening was when she took it to the Apple store, the person, the helper guy, basically like double clicked the home screen and it showed all of the apps that she had open. And basically she had like 100 apps open and it was running in the background. And so that was why her battery was dying in like no time. So something to consider, especially, as we bring these iPads or whatever, and they need to last longer. We don't have direct access to, a charging cable. If you double click that home button very quickly, you'll see all the apps that are currently open. In order to get rid of an app, to close it out completely, you would just take it and swipe up. And that's essentially closing out the app. Now, one of the questions that came in that I saw was, how do I toggle between apps if I'm in Zoom? Now, if you notice, I am currently in Zoom right now, right? So I'm in Zoom on my iPad right now. If I wanted to, I could double click and access another app. I still have Zoom going. It's still there. And you can tell that because I'm still sharing my screen. So it's still there in the background. Now, in terms of the app that I closed, that's out. So that's like actually shutting down the app, and you can't go back and forth between it anymore. Another
if I could just jump in. So like the important thing to note there for students when they're working at home is when they're in their teacher's Zoom, if the teacher navigates, say, open up Pages or open up Flipgrid, what have you, they can maintain presence in that Zoom classroom by letting the app run in the background. By not closing out Zoom altogether, it's still running in the background, and you maintain audio contact with that Zoom room so you can still hear the teacher broadcasting. So even if I opened up Pages or Keynote or Flipgrid, I can still hear what my teacher is saying.
That's a great point. And so what I just did there was I brought up Pages, and I'm still again in, here's Zoom, it's still open. And if I were to, be in Pages, now if I was a student, the teacher would no longer see my face. If I open up any sort of app, or if even if I split the screen or something, Zoom doesn't recognize that it could read the camera while you still have another app open. So if the teacher does not see your child's face, that's likely because either they're in another app or they're splitting their screen and so on. But they will always be able to hear them, and they'll still be able to hear their teacher as well. So that's important to note. Now, what I just did here was instead of clicking the home button, I can actually use 4 fingers and toggle between the apps that are open. So I just went back and forth with Zoom. I could go back and forth, left and right. And that's kind of like an advanced and extra feature. It's not, a lot of times it's just easier to hit the home button and go back and forth. But if you're only working with, let's say, the graphing calculator, and Desmos or something like that, you just go back and forth, or Safari, you would just go back and forth with 4 fingers swiping horizontally. Okay. I'm just making sure I get everything. Totally close the app. Yep. All right. So now the next thing is, so one of the pieces of feedback that came back was that the Schoology app doesn't have everything that it does if you were to access it on a desktop. And while a lot of the programs, are mimicking the desktop app, it's just a slightly different version. In terms of Schoology, sometimes it's a little bit more simplified than what you need. So one of the things I always recommend to students is, with the Schoology app is important because that's where you get your notifications from, so that the kids can see, like, oh, Miss Resig or Miss Palayo posted an assignment. But in terms of like accessing all the features and stuff, a great option for you, and this is also kind of a tip, is you would go into Safari, and the student website for Schoology is pway.schoology.com. Jeff, do you want to put that in the chat? The pway.schoology.com. So that's how they would access it, through like Safari or the Chrome browser. And then you would sign in, and it would look very much like it looks on a desktop for you or a laptop. So it looks exactly like it, and it has the same functionality. Now, the one thing that I wanted to bring up is creating a shortcut. All right. So how do I make this look like an app? You can actually set this up so that it looks exactly like an app, and it's just as easy to toggle. I could put it on my quick access bar. So if you click this little square with the arrow coming out of it, you have a couple of options. You could either add it as a bookmark. My favorite is adding it to the home screen. And then I would modify the name. And when I click add, if you notice here, I now have I now have this as an app, right? This is my app for Schoology. So anytime I need to go in, I can just click it, I'll sign into Schoology, and I'm good to go. So that is a great way, honestly, for anything, right? So I'm trying to think of another instance where you may want to use that. If there's a website that is frequently accessed, that would be a great option for you. All right. So then now the next thing that I'm going to talk about is scanning a document. A lot of times, especially in the older grades, teachers will ask that you scan your document, scan your work, almost like a homework, right? And then place it in Schoology or place it in Google Classroom. All right, so I'm going to show you how to do that. And I made some fancy poster looking things that we can do. So the nice thing about the Notes app on the iPad, there's tons of free ones out there, but again, if it's not a district approved app, you're not gonna be able to access it. So the one thing that you're gonna do is you're gonna swipe down and you're gonna look for the Notes app. Okay, now I actually already have a couple of documents that are here. You may see this, I'm not sure what it looks like when you enter in. So this is my test class. So I have no notes here, but what I'm gonna do right now is scan page 1 and 2 of my notes, and I'm going to put them into Schoology. And similarly, it would be anywhere where something is requiring submission, you would basically follow this same process. So I'm going to go off screen for just a second. One thing that I wanted, actually, maybe I don't have to make my workspace work for me here. One thing that I suggest is I have these papers that are here that I'm going to scan. Whenever students are submitting or creating PDFs, I always recommend that they stand up. They stand up, and you want to make sure that your iPad is horizontal, parallel with the table. And that'll ensure that you have a nice clear view of the entire page that you're scanning. And also, I recommend that you tap the center so that it'll focus it in. And then I'm going to show you a couple of other options that's available once you take the picture.
So again, what Jackie's showing us is how to scan a document. So if students are completing work offline, paper and pencil, or an art project, something like that, the best way to scan or to submit that document is through a scanned PDF. So that's what we're showing now in the Notes app.
Yep. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to click the square with the pencil that's in it, and that will start a new note. Okay, so then what I'm going to do is click the little camera that's here, right here. And I'm going to click Scan Documents. Okay. And I'm going to make sure that my screen is the same orientation as my paper. Now, if you'll notice, I have an auto option and a manual option. That's in terms of taking the picture. So this yellow, as soon as it feels like it has a good take, you'll notice it automatically took that picture for me. And at the bottom, now you'll see page 1. So this little icon down here is page 1. And I'll go through how to edit these in just a second. I'm also going to change right now to manual because I want you to see how that works. So that was page 1. Okay. And then this is page 2 manual. So the yellow box is basically showing you what it's going to take a picture of. So it's like an auto crop. But as I do manual now, you'll see that I have these little circles, I guess, that you can kind of like adjust the corners. So you can make it a perfect scan. And I'm going to click keep scan. Now in the bottom right-hand corner, you'll see save with parentheses 2. That means that I have 2 current scans that we're working with. Now, if I wanted to go in and I'm like, I really don't like the way page 1 came, I can click on page 1 and I can do a couple of things. I can crop it. So this was the auto scan. I didn't like that the way that it was. If I wanted to scan it in any different way or crop it, I can do that by clicking that first button. If I wanted to change it so that it was black and white, I can click the 3 circle Venn diagrams type thing, and you can change it so that it's black and white. A lot of times I would recommend, I always recommended with students to either upload it in color, that's fine, or black and white. Black and white is the smallest file, so that makes it quickest and easiest to open. But I wouldn't recommend doing a photo. Photos are the biggest files, so it takes longer to upload and longer for the teacher to be able to view. So that's just a courtesy type thing.
And just to clarify, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but just to clarify, the big difference when scanning the document between auto and manual is that in both modes, the yellow box that's showing you where your document is and what's being scanned is there in both modes. But the difference is in auto, the camera will automatically capture after holding your iPad steady for about 3-5 seconds. In manual, you click the camera button. So correct. More personal preference there, but just an option.
Yep, you have a little bit more control over when it takes the picture. Yes, thank you. The next option here is just adjusting the orientation. And if I wanted to totally scrap the page because I no longer want to do it, I can click the trash can. If I want to replace page 1 with another page, I can click retake and go through the whole process again. Okay, now I have all the pages that I want. I have page 1 and page 2. And I'm going to click save. In the bottom right-hand corner, I'm going to click save. It's showing me I have 2 files. All right. And if I click test class, I'll see now I have a new note that's called, I have a new note. All right. And it contains these 2 files. So now what I'm going to show you is how to go from the Notes app to Schoology. Now, if the students have the app, what they'll do is click the 3 buttons at the top. And they'll click share note. Send a copy. So now at the top, you'll see a bunch of apps that are already here. Now, if you don't see the app that you're looking for, you can swipe all the way to the right and click more. And you can see other suggested apps that you'd be able to do something with this file with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to upload it to Schoology. So it's taking me through the Schoology app. And it's going to say submit to assignment. I have a couple more options here because I'm an admin or a teacher in some of the courses. But your student will see submit to assignment. They could also save it in their resources. Remember, I was telling you you could use it as a storage app. Schoology has a storage app as well. You can do that. So in my class, I only have 1 class right now, and it's called Test Paleo. Very creative. Section 1, I'm going to click on my class that I want to submit this assignment to. And the assignment is called sample. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click sample and upload my submission. And it gives confirmation that my submission has been added. It doesn't obtain my feed because I have 150 courses on here, but basically that's what it'll give you, the confirmation that it has been submitted. All right, another thing that you can work through, if you prefer not working through the Schoology app, kind of a more cumbersome way to do it, but also just an additional way to do it, is to save to files. Apple newly released this where they have basically like a way to save all of your files like to your desktop, right? On a desktop, you might have My Documents. This is essentially what this is as well. So you can kind of organize your scanned documents by class. So if I wanted to save this into, I don't know what, Algebra 2? Algebra 2, I can save it that way. Now, if I were to go back into my school, I could go into the class just as I would normally. Oh, it logged me out. Just give me a sec as I log back in here. It's not going to let me do this. Anyway, what you can basically do is submit the assignment and then browse from your files and be able to upload the access that way. I'm not going to go through that right now just solely because I'm going to have to put in my password and everything. There's no way to hide it as I'm sharing my screen. So just keep that in mind. There is a way to do that, and you can now grab it from your Files app. Annotation. And we had one question about annotation. So basically, it's like a note-taking app. In grades 6 through 8, they have Notability. They have the Notability app, which enables them to kind of organize files and PDFs given by their teacher and write on them. In grades 9 through 12, they have something called PDF Expert, which is similar to it. It's a little bit different in nature, but it's essentially a note-taking app as well. And then in grades K through 5, they have Markup. So Markup, if you ever saw it, is basically just a way to quickly mark up a file, and then you can export it to an app. And that's built in with the iPad itself. And that is the end of my notes. There's a lot, a lot of different things that I went through. But those are some of the core features that I felt like were important to show you to anybody new with the iPad. So Jeff, do you have any additional questions brought forward?
No, right now our chat is not showing any questions. But if you have any questions, feel free to drop them right in the chat and we could answer them.
Okay. Yeah, if anybody has any questions at this moment, if you need me to go back and look at something, feel free to do that. I know I went a little fast in certain areas.
So questions coming in, is the Notes app the same as Pages? They're similar, but they're not exactly the same app. They each have different features, but Notes is definitely the best one to use for that scan document feature.
Right. So Pages is almost like a Microsoft Word, right? So you can create it, you could type in it. There's a bunch of different options in there, but you can make, all sorts of things, all different formatted things. And this is, again, it's organic to the Apple platform. So every iPad comes with it and you can just play with it. They have basic templates and stuff. In terms of notes, kind of like what Jeff was just saying, is that it's the best one for this is the one that does the PDF scanning, but you could actually add more stuff on top of this. So if I wanted to do that and then type, my notes for the class that day, if I wanted to scribble within it, I think it's looking for my it's not working for me right now. My pencil is not working. But anyway, you can also like incorporate Scribble. And there's a couple of other options for you there, but you can actually embed all of that into one place. So it is a good option to take notes and things like that.
Could you show us accessing the control center, swiping from the upper right corner? Some folks are having trouble accessing that.
Okay, so all right, so hold on one sec. Let me just reorganize myself. Get nice and close to the camera. All right. All right, so in order to get this control center, you may have to turn it on. So I'm going to take a look at the settings because I don't think I actually went through that. In the top right-hand corner, you're just gonna take it and you're gonna drag down. If you're not seeing that, what I want you to do is go to settings again. And then control center, sorry. All right, so it's one of the options down over here. It's called Control Center. And what that'll allow you to do is modify the apps that you have within the Control Center. If it's not toggled where it says access within apps, you may not be able to see it, so that it might not be enabled for you. If you still don't see it when you're trying to access it, you may just want to make sure that your iPad is completely up to date. And to do that, you would go to settings. You would go to general. Usually it would say that there's an update available right smack in the middle over here, or you could go to software update, click it manually. I know my glare is bad, sorry. I'm trying to make it work. And you can see if you're not at 14.0, you might not be up to date, so you might not have that option there. Did that work for the person who was having a hard time with that? Still not working? Mr. Iravondo, do you have any other troubleshooting things if their control center is not working?
Hi there. You have the iPad in front of you? If you don't mind, do you mind, Jackie, Jeff, do you mind if she unmutes?
Nope, not at all.
All right, can you just hold it up for me, please?
Did that do it?
All right, a little further back. All right, start your finger at the battery. There you go, there's your control center, turn around.
You got it. One other question that came in that maybe Chris can help us out with was a question about using Lightspeed to access certain websites and possible limitations, websites that may be blocked. Any advice or notes on that, Chris?
So thank you, Jeff. The whole idea of Lightspeed and Jamf, both programs kind of do the same thing in the sense that they protect the user of the iPad, much like if they were in school. Let's say that the student was in school and they went to a computer, that laptop or desktop in our district, we have filtering software and protection software. We have to, that complies with SIPA. It's Child Internet Protection Act. We are required by law to have filtering software on our computers in district. We are also required to have that type of protection on any device that we hand to children to take outside. So Jackie brought up a great point with Lightspeed. Every time you change networks, you have to log back into Lightspeed because the device wants to know that we have control over what websites that device can and can't access. If you don't believe me, no, don't do this, but if you try to search, gambling, thank you, Mrs. Baskerville. I appreciate that. It's going to tell you that this is not appropriate. It's not available because it has the terminology gambling. And of course, we don't want our kindergartners gambling at any point in time. So Jamf also puts that block in. But if the device connects to the internet, it has that filtering in. So Lightspeed is what we've been using in district the last 8 years. I am so happy that we're moving toward Jamf because it's the industry standard for filtering. So either way, both products, that device should not go anywhere it's not supposed to because of that filtering.
Thank you.
Susan, I'm just going to probably have to keep a Zoom on with you for, permanently. Let's see it again. No, seriously, let me see. Let's put your camera on. All right. What you do is take your finger and place it lightly right over. You want to make sure that you have the home screen. There you go. Put your finger right on the battery and swipe diagonally. There you go. I'm 2 for 2.
So the trick is to turn the iPad away from you, I guess, and not look at it.
Or what we can do is, like I said, we'll put a poster sized picture of me somewhere in your house. Yeah, basically and all kidding aside, when you make that swipe, you want to make it just very light, coming from all the way up. What a lot of people do is they start a little low and it doesn't catch because Apple doesn't know what you're doing. But if you start up top and you start right at the battery, you don't need to put a lot of pressure. It's just a simple swipe, diagonal swipe.
Jeff, do we have any more questions from the survey that we didn't answer? No. Okay.
I think we are looking okay. So at this time, I'll just remind everybody that we will be sending out a feedback survey at the end of this session. And additionally, we're going to show a link that if you have questions still after this, or you're still working on that iPad and a question comes up, the website there that's listed below, piscatawayschools.org/parent_workshop. That will take you to a site where you can submit questions specific to the iPad workshop.